dreams come true. Love it. Oh, I'm loving all of this. You see, we told you it was going to be a bit different session, right? Superpowers. Oh, Pamela, that's so beautiful. Helping people truly understand each other. That's beautiful. Adriana, to be able to fly or move quickly to other parts of the world. I love that, bringing someone with me. Reading people's minds seems to be quite a constant in this group. Okay. Ah, there we go. I hope you're enjoying. It's Bill Withers. So I'm pleased you're enjoying the music. Teleport. Oh, Barney, automatic translation. That would definitely change my life. It's so incredible to see how many people from around the world. This catalyst is just incredible, this platform. Peter, generate funds like an ATM. I think a lot of people want that. So if you want to react, you can always do a thumbs up or a high, but there is a reaction button, and so please feel free to use it right through. Peter, you've hit a winner there. And do great things with the money withdrawn. Cecilia, I know that for sure. Generate happiness and harmony. Beautiful. So what I'd like to do, this session has 5 facilitators. I'm super excited to be with these incredible people. And so what I'd really like to do is just ask them to put a hands up. You're going to be meeting them through the session. So let me introduce you. Brendon, Gwyn, Nick, Debbi, Gordian. And they are all going to be taking over at different times. Please feel free to use chat whenever you'd like to. We'll be watching that. And I now want to hand over to Nick.
Thank you, Kim, and thank you everyone for joining us on this journey. Buckle up, that was a great start. We're actually going to change pace and flow quite a bit through this session and do quite a lot of meta stuff. But first of all, just an introduction to the Catalyst week that we are part of right now. I'm just going to share this little video and then we'll come back. So feel free to dance or bop your head to this.
Catalyst 2030 started life as a WhatsApp group among social entrepreneurs, connecting to envision real transformational change. Launched at the World Economic Forum in January 2020, it's grown into a global movement accelerating change to ensure the SDGs are reached by 2030. Fueled by passion, our 550 members working in 175 countries have collectively put in an amazing 50,000 volunteer hours, touching the lives of 2 billion people. And we're driven by values to which we hold ourselves accountable. 2020 was a busy year, co-creating 3 reports with partners and producing one of our own. Inviting high-level guests to participate in the Catalysing Change campaign, hosting fireside chats and expert hours, which will be continuing in 2021. To celebrate our achievements, together we placed our supporters in the limelight with the first Catalyst 2030 Awards for Systemic Change. With the blessing of the Dalai Lama, we celebrated finalists and winners in the following categories. Special recognition for our early supporters, individual philanthropists, donor organizations, philanthropic intermediaries, corporate organizations, bi- and multilateral organizations, and 4 regional winners in the category of national governments. And now on to Catalysing Change Week 2021. During this social entrepreneur-led event, we bring together diverse stakeholders in over 100 sessions to showcase their systems change efforts and the best practices that can accelerate our work in pursuit of the SDGs.
Super, thanks. Well, that's a little bit about the Catalyst community. And so why are we here? Well, hopefully we're all aligned around collaborating towards the SDGs, around a vision that you might have for a better world. But what is the superpower that is required to mobilize collective action? Well, facilitation is definitely something that unites the experts, the facilitators that just were waving their hands. Yeah, so that's a little bit around our alignment. So yeah, we've introduced the panelists. What we like to do at the start of any session is to just invite you in to build the social contract. So what is it that this group, if you could go back to the previous slide, please. Yeah. What is it that this group wants to put together as our ways of interacting? So we do, as facilitators, love to see your beautiful faces. There's a lot of feedback that we can get from the video, but it's also great for you to be fully engaged. And engagement is a key word in facilitation. So also nice if you can have these little connection points and build up through the session. So just starting with your name and company, and that typing exercise that we just did is another example. Should be very participatory. We would encourage you to unmute when you want to speak, because otherwise we can't hear you. And then be very cognizant of how much space you take up, so that we can ensure that all voices are heard. Yeah, I hope we're all aligned around this vision for a truly inclusive and equitable and just world. So bottom line is, let's enjoy. With that, I would just like to encourage anyone to say if they feel like there's something missing from the social contract. If you'd like to type in chat something that you would like us to introduce to this little list, yeah, we're more than open to additions.
Nick, I'll take the chance to add one if I may, because I think it relates to the topic today, which is about facilitating, I think, for me, inclusive spaces. And so I would just invite people also just to be where you are. So for example, right now, I'm on daddy duty and I am peeling green beans for dinner. And that's where I am. I'm in the kitchen. I don't have any fancy backgrounds, but I'm still being fully present. Actually, doing something physically, moving around when I'm in a call makes me more present. So I think that's a good tip to add here, but also just in general for facilitation, whether we're online, maybe even more so when we're online or in person, letting people be where they are and giving them space to kind of shift and move and do something different. So if I may add that.
Of course. Thank you, Brendon. Yeah. How does that land? Is there anything else anyone would like to add? Oh, and David, thank you for capturing that harvesting. That's another great tip, that if we collectively harvest, so it shows the reflection. It's a great way to integrate what you've just heard, because typing or writing is a lot more active than just listening. So yeah, I would definitely encourage us to collectively take responsibility for harvesting these learnings and insights. Okay, well, the last thing that I will just mention is a little bit around the community values that Catalyst is about. So it is a member-led organization, so everything comes from the members. It is all about this collaborative spirit that's in the DNA of everything we do, which means there is this wonderful spirit of generosity. So a huge thanks to all of the facilitators who have put this together. at such short notice. And with that, I shall hand over to Gwyn. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. My name is Gwyn Wansbrough, and I'm a facilitator and a experience designer. I'm based in Barcelona, Spain. I'm one of the facilitators for the group today. I recently stepped down as the executive director of a global facilitation organization called Partners for Youth Empowerment, and it's great to see some of you from that network here today. And I teach facilitation to teachers, professors, educators around the world to make learning experiences more dynamic, engaging, and meaningful. So that's just a little bit about me, but what I'd love to do is get a little gauge on where this group is at with facilitation and how confident you feel with your facilitation abilities. So Anthony, if you could, we've got a little poll for you. We're just going to run the poll, just give you about a minute to respond to how confident you feel with your facilitation ability, just to get a little gauge of where the group is at. And just as if everyone has had a chance to answer, Anthony, are we ready to show the results? Wonderful. So we've got really a pretty balanced mix of about 30% beginner, 30% knowledgeable, 30% seasoned, and 10% experts. Wonderful. So in this session, it doesn't matter how much facilitation experience you have. It's really an opportunity for us to explore this superpower that we call facilitation and why it's so important in systems change work. So before we get into the second part of the session, which is going to be experimenting with some facilitation tools, let's just start with an opportunity to connect and get to know each other a little better. So in a few moments, we're going to put you in breakout groups of 3 people. And in those groups, I'd just love to invite you to share your name, where you're from, and something you love about the work that you do, whatever work that is. Okay, each person will have about a minute. It's just a quick introduction, and then you'll have about 3 or 4 minutes to have a discussion about what facilitation is and why it's important in systems change work. Just an open discussion. You'll have about 7 minutes total in your groups. Time flies by, so just keep an eye on the time. And then we'll come back to the big group and share some ideas around facilitation and systems change. All right, I'm going to put the instructions in the chat. And unless there are any questions, we can get our breakout groups. I'm just going to put the instructions here. Fabulous. If you have any problems, just come back to the main room. But otherwise, enjoy this connection time.
There's a lot. So that's one fundamentally central piece of the equity and the just world that we were mentioning at the start.
Great. I'll remain. You have my support.
Yeah, there are some active groups in Catalyst that are working on that. Lots of sessions on that this week as well.
Should I put my email in the chat, or is that too much private information?
As you wish. Yeah.
Oh, in case you have it otherwise, but I will put it in the chat.
Yeah. We just encourage people to share where they're from and what they wish their superpower would be.
Okay, cool. That's what I'll do now. Thanks.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Great. I think we're all filtering back in from our breakout groups. Great. And so I'd just love to invite you to put any thoughts, and reflections in the chat from your discussion. And I see Pamela has a question. Can you please define systems change? We're going to really go into that in this discussion. So any thoughts in the chat that came up? Any thoughts, reflections that came up from your breakout groups? And if there are maybe 2 or 3 people who would like to share in the big group, just a few reflections on particularly this question about what is facilitation and why is it important in systems change work? Okay, we've got great, and you can just put your hand up in the reactions. And I see Stephanie, and there's just a few screens here, so we'll just toggle back and forth. Okay, Stephanie, Lorraine. Stephanie, do you want to just start by just sharing your reflections?
Yes, thank you, Gwyn. It's a pleasure to be here, and we had a fabulous conversation about facilitating. What I loved is we're all around the world, so it's kind of interesting even just the definitions and how there is some synergy between them. So we came up with really this concept of bringing people together. We're the curators. We create the experiences and the connections. And I loved it. One of our members said we build bridges for the community. We didn't get too much into the depth of why it's so important, but we did identify what it meant to each of us to show up really with, I love this quote, it's not being a sage on the stage, but a guide on the side. So we're the support team, we're in the trenches doing the work with the people and really casting that vision to bring and unite communities.
Wonderful. Thanks, Stephanie. Lorraine, did you want to add some thoughts here?
Yes, thank you. We didn't get too deep into facilitation other than to talk about how challenging it can be in the digital mediated space to have the same kind of feeling in a room. But I will share, I think for systems change and systemic change, facilitation is a critical part of the work because you have to be able to create a space for dialogue, which is a creative act of a group of people. And so being able to create the space for that is important. But I think I often say I act like an antenna. My job is to be the antenna that picks up the signals. Sometimes I have to translate and I'm not always right. And sometimes my job is more to be a midwife and just let it kind of come through. So that's why it's important.
Great. I love some of those metaphors and picking up the signals and really kind of sensing like an antenna and the aspect of midwifery also in facilitation. Anyone else want to just share any reflections from the breakout groups? I see there's a lot of comments in the chat, which is really wonderful, and lots of different thoughts on facilitation, unleashing people's potential, encouraging and possibly, hopefully ensuring inclusivity, unifying and gives voice to those who don't normally have one. Facilitation is hearing the voices from all the stakeholders, the process of helping groups of people and processes of collaboration. There's a lot around collaboration, navigating uncertainty, and creating conditions for connection with self and others. Those are really touching on some of the key aspects of facilitation. So I just wanted to share with you a couple of my thoughts on facilitation. And I'm wondering, Anthony, if you would put up the first slide. The auto Schammer. Yeah, okay, great. So what is facilitation? And I mean, at its core, facilitation really means to make something easier. Traditional definitions of a facilitator are usually something around a neutral third party who helps groups get from point A to point B to achieve desired outcomes. That's one definition, but that's actually not my view of what describes a facilitator in systems change work. Why? Because systems change work is much more complex. And where, as Otto Scharmer in his work in Theory U says, in most large systems today, we create results that no one wants. And we seem to be, we keep kind of producing these results. So as this kind of our world moves from hierarchical structures to more collaborative networks, as we move from these, kind of control-based systems to ones that adapt in the face of uncertainty, from predefined outcomes to moving towards ways to surface what wants to emerge, that's where the role of the facilitator comes in. And I really believe, from what I'm seeing in the field, is that facilitation is really having a moment. I think we're more and more aware of the importance of the skills of the facilitator. So on the next slide, there's a definition that I quite like on facilitation, and some of you have touched upon some of these elements in your comments, but it comes from a book called Facilitating Breakthrough, which actually hasn't even been published yet, by Adam Kahan. And he describes a facilitator as anyone who supports groups to collaborate and advance. Transformative facilitation employs structures and creative ways to help diverse groups remove obstacles, bridge differences, and move forward together. There's more that we can say about facilitation, but just briefly, again, some of you have touched on what does a facilitator actually do then? And Anthony, if you could show the next slide. Again, we talked about creating these safe and brave spaces for exploration, building connection and community, sharing the responsibility for the group process, support group members to interrogate their own assumptions and biases in the process, bring out the wisdom in the group, explore unknown issues, ideas, blind spots, support visioning, and guide toward action. I'd love to actually, if reading this list and more things come up, please feel free to add those in the chat, and let's, this is there's more things to add to this list, but this is just some of the things that come up for me. So with that, I'm going to just pass it over. Brendon, are you out there? And would you like to just talk a little bit about facilitation in the context, introduce yourself and talk about facilitation in the context of systems change?
Sure, thanks. And Anthony, I think I'll share something in a moment, but I saw that there is in the chat, there was a question kind of what is systems change? And I'm not going to try and answer that question because I fear 20 people in this call will disagree with me, but maybe my answer will be that there is no unified definition. But to me, systems change is just kind of everything. And I think facilitation is being able to put all those pieces together of systems change to work. So in kind of my experiences, having gone through a kind of a life journey in my career that started from everything from kind of working at the very rural and local level to working with kind of large multi-stakeholder collaborations, to working within networks, to working within, Anthony, would you mind unsharing your screen? I think it's still shared. I'm just going to share mine in a moment, thanks. And to kind of working within organizations. Essentially, systems change is understanding all of those things come together to basically try and tackle these large, wicked problems we call, like climate change, or I think COVID has been a really illuminating example of how systems work and how everything is interconnected, and how we need to actually bring together multiple actors to be able to address the issue at a global level, and also how it's not just the institutions or the businesses or the governments that have to address it, but it's also very much the mindsets of the people who are involved in it. And it's also not just one country, but it's all countries that are interconnected. And so that's kind of a little bit of a taste of what systems change is. Facilitating all of that is, for me, one of the most needed and important things, because whether you are facilitating a collaborative design process, or whether you're facilitating an engagement process for different people across different power structures to be able to first tackle and recognize those power structures, but also be willing to kind of have dialogue with each other, and then kind of moving beyond dialogue to a space where they can kind of co-create, and then moving beyond the co-creation to a place where they can actually work together and make decisions collaboratively. And this happens at the very micro level to the very macro level. And I think one of the important things in all of that is that facilitation is not, there's no one kind of facilitation, and there's no one kind of facilitator. Actually, good facilitation mixes different kinds of facilitators. And I'm just going to borrow for a few seconds a wonderful drawing from, it was a session that I facilitated a few weeks ago with the Changemaker Exchange Network, which is an incredible network of amazing change makers, and we just had an open discussion about collaboration and facilitating collaboration. And I'll just kind of highlight some of the things that came out of that, which includes everything from how do we identify common problems. Oh, this disk space problem is getting out of hand. How do we kind of encourage sharing resources and skills, exploring different mechanisms together, knowing our common audience, clarifying our purpose, building trust for everyone involved, non-hierarchical ways of working, facilitating those processes, because yes, we institute a lot of them, but then they kind of die. And I believe it has to do a lot with how we facilitate them. It's not just the structures, but also the people who are enabling the structures. And then there's kind of clarity, having clear plans, kind of figuring out how do we take all these different goals or ideas and narrow them down into something that makes sense, that inspires and motivates all of us. So, you know, I'm giving you a very bad answer because I'm basically saying facilitation is everything, but I hope in that you see yourself, whether you're at the expert level or the complete novice level, that you can fit in anywhere in this process. In the kind of this one last point that I'll mention is, in the breakout room that I just had, we actually talked about how facilitation happens very much in organizations. A good manager, even if we don't use that word manager anymore in certain spaces, but a good manager is actually a good facilitator, because they're able to kind of help people make sense of what they're thinking about, or figure out their place, or bring together decisions in a kind of a way that makes sense for the people in the organization. So yeah, I'll just stop there and toss the ball back to Gwyn, sorry, thank you.
Great, thanks, Brendon. Did you want to just say a quick word about the database that you're working on? Or do you want to maybe talk about that at the end? I
can do it now. I wasn't quite sure whether I would do it now or at the end, actually, but I'll do it now since I'm already speaking, and then everybody has to hear my voice less. So one of the things that I've kind of been working on over the years, and we've been working on with catalyse, is this database, which I can share the link in the chat in a minute. But essentially, this is, so there's 450 tools in here, and this is an enormous database of kind of all the facilitation tools that I've used over the years, and I've had other people add them as well. And so, you know, I'll share this because if it's useful for anybody, then kind of you can kind of go through it and find things that might be useful. And we're also figuring out ways that we can integrate this within Catalyst. But I think what's important maybe for this conversation is kind of all the different breadth of tools that are in here, and how you can kind of pick and choose any of them, but they're all about collaborative impact or systems change. So whether that's, you know, using kind of a rich picture, for example, to help people kind of visualize and make sense of an issue or a vision, or how to kind of use a dissent process to help people give feedback, or open space processes, or, you know, there's kind of how to do inclusive design processes, equity is a big element of systems change. So how to engage, how to kind of think about power, how to look back at history. And I could keep going, how to find common ground for mutual understanding, appreciative inquiry. Gwyn is going to run us through that in a moment. Also network kind of weaving and how to understand steps to a healthy network, assess networks. So again, I'll share this, but this is just to also just illustrate and demonstrate the breadth of facilitation that you can do. And that is, I think, it's important to kind of, within that big breadth, find your strength and your skill, almost being able to kind of facilitate your own journey to become a facilitator. Thanks, Gwyn, for allowing me to show that now.
Great. Well, Brendon, when you first told me about that toolkit, it was like, oh my gosh, this is like every facilitator's dream. And the amount of work that has gone into collecting all of those tools is just extraordinary. So thank you for the work that you've done on that toolkit. And I see a lot of people very interested, and there it is. There is the link to the database.
Well,
so,
I'll just add that kind of when we get to the closing, we'll talk about potential next steps about how within Catalyst and beyond Catalyst we can kind of, take this to something that can be more and more useful to the transformational change sector.
Fantastic. Great. And if anyone has any other toolkits or resources that are kind of their go-to resources, please feel free to put those in the chat, and we'll have like this amazing, bank of facilitation tools and resources at the end of the session. So I just wanted to check in. Debbi and Gordian, do you want to go ahead next with your exercise? And we can circle back to mine after.
If you prefer, we can start.
Okay, why don't you and Debbi go ahead with your exercise, and then I'll come back at the end.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Gwyn. Debbi, are you there? Just waiting.
Debbi, take yourself off of mute.
Anthony, go ahead and show the slides with Gordian's wonderful quotes.
So we actually kind of take over and will guide you a little bit through the topic of the crowd decision making. So because that's what we always face. And there's one major problem that I always see when I'm in a group of people, forcing them to kind of like come to a conclusion, is that it's always the aim to put the right choice on the table, but the problem is, what is the right choice? And that's what we would like to kind of like exercise a little bit with you and find the influences, the biases, the influence, the perceptions, so everything that actually influences our decision-making competences. And what is most crucial, we will talk about the gaps that are actually available with this. And if you could put the next one. Before, we would like you to just kind of drop a little note. What was the most important recent decision that you made and that will have an impact? So what is the change about? And just don't think too much, just kind of like put it in. Yeah. So actually, the question is, you made decisions. So actually, everybody's making decisions, roughly 30,000 per day. And some of them are more habits, some of them are decisions, and some of them are very important, life-changing, systems changing. And what decision have you done recently? Okay, cool. I love that you see the impact in coming to the community. And curriculum online. Okay, cool, perfect. So that's what the database is as well about, to share knowledge. And yeah, so giving up fish, Nick, perfect. Okay. Cool. Yeah, so there's a lot of decisions coming in, and you see this is just the decisions that you find the most valuable, but there are so many out there, and for all these decisions you need to collect data. And that's what we want to kind of like dive into with you. And Debbie, do you want
Yes.
to?
So what we're going to do is do this systems change. And there's the graphic that Anthony has. And so I'm going to share my screen. And in that screen share, you'll actually see this mural. So on the right side, you will see a link in the chat to the mural. What we've done is we created a mural board, and we've got 2 of these. One of these is the definition of systems change by John Kenya, who works with Catalyst. It's about systems change is about shifting the conditions that are holding people in place. And in that, you can add the major sections, so the orange. So mental models that are affecting us, our deeply held beliefs and thoughts and assumptions, could be our power dynamics, so the dynamics of who has the power in this relationship. It could be our donors, it could be whoever. And then, so you'll answer these questions, one with what are the gaps in our knowledge on systems change, the yellow ones, what can provide resources to fill in those gaps, and then the yellow ones. When you do this, if you're not familiar with using Mural, we went ahead and put in some of these graphics, but you just grab a graphic and you can cut and paste a new one. You can go in there, you can type it out. The other one that we're going to do, and so each group's kind of just randomly got selected, is what is your why? And so if you know Simon Sink and you followed him, it is, what is your why? What is your purpose? And so we used his questions here. So here's the 3 prompts. And for me, it's to impact the lives of others. I'm an educator and I do this through teaching. And so you would add like, oh, it's not just teaching, I do facilitation, I do, whatever. And you add those in. So Anthony's got us set up in breakout rooms. And then if you're number 6 or 7 in the group, so if you're in group 6 or 7, since there's so many of us, there'll be a second mural that I'm going to put in the chat for you folks. But you will see up on your screen, Anthony will give you a select breakout. You'll get a go into your breakout room. Go ahead.
Just give me 1 second.
Sure. And you'll go into your breakout room and you'll work on this collaboratively. So as you're putting things in on what's my why, talk through that. This is my why, this is my why, this is my why. And then go to the next question together. You may have to add it. So if you're used to Mural, you can cut and paste and add new ones. You just kind of have a go at it and have a good time as well. When you're doing Mural, you're going to do bigger and smaller. So you'll just have to kind of manipulate with it. It can be a little, funky if you're not used to it. If you got the mouse with the slider, it's a little bit easier. Go ahead, Anthony. We're going in.
Yes, everyone should be back from the breakout rooms now.
Yeah.
Every time I have to turn the mic on. Let's start off. Is anybody want to do theirs on the why? Any volunteers? Pick a color. And I will highlight you. Purple, want to do it? Green, blue?
Debbie, I don't mind speaking for purple and you can fill it in.
Perfect.
It was difficult for us to be filling it in.
Okay,
So it was very interesting because our whole group was all around children and teens and mental health and education. And so everyone felt very strongly their why was very strong to help and support children with mental health and to live a better life. So the why, we were very, very aligned in our whys, and then the hows were different. There was a counselor in our group at a university, and so she works a lot with youth at the university, and she's also very concerned about the elderly and their mental health. There was someone working with Dream a Dream. He was an economist and then joined Dream a Dream in India, who do incredible work. And so he wants to give children a better step up and opportunity, and he's doing it through Dream a Dream. And then there was another economist, and she's now figuring out around Africa, how to work in Africa, to especially around the girl child and around women and entrepreneurship and empowering people using education in that kind of space. Great. And then for myself, making impact for children to live in a better world. And my how has always been through both academic and social emotional learning. So all my organizations that I've set up and run is all around that, going within so that you know how to live without. So the hows are different, but our whys all very much aligned.
Great, wonderful, I love it. Great. Gordian, do you want your group to go or our group?
Yeah, it's fine. We can start.
Sure.
David left, so maybe Patty, do you want to start and I'll just assist?
All right. I think it was interesting to sort of talk about some of the points that were there, and I think the additions that we have put in terms of the gaps in learning, some particular points around access, and I think this is having a seat. That's essentially a gap, and that's very important in terms of ensuring that gaps on learning are filled in terms of the systems change. And I think there was also something that Fenno brought up quite powerfully on norms and culture. That's that we cannot I think live without, or we cannot be able to move forward, because they're quite important in the way they would impact any I mean they have a big, I think that they just impact on sort of behavioral change and these other aspects and sustainability, because they're very much a part of us. And I think the rest of the points that were there, I don't know if Gordian, you want to dig into them.
Yeah, there was actually there was a very interesting input. It's to me, it's the points of leverage. So David was talking about, okay, that's one of the crucial parts that you have to really kind of like get knowledgeable about, because that's the way that you can really implement a change. And we had a very kind of like interesting input as well about the internal and external access. So plus funds and the uncertainty about outcomes. So the topic of uncertainty was very interesting as well, because there was the point that we are not in a laboratory situation. So when we change things, we change it in a full, means we cannot say certain parameters are fixed and we can just kind of like see, does that work as you do it at university? You have to kind of like do the full change, otherwise you're gonna lose the momentum. So time was short. We didn't make it into the second and third level, but we actually agreed on that. It's kind of like a very kind of interesting starting point to think along the systems change.
Great, wonderful. So we wanted to give you the opportunity to see how to utilize the tool, how you can get collaborations, how everyone has a voice, and those that are a little bit more quiet have that opportunity to type things in, and then everyone else can share. But the whole idea here is kind of, we want to get our voices about systems change within our organizations, and how do we get to the higher level to achieve systems level change and to work through those barriers, work through some of the challenges, work through the mental models and the way that we've always believed, the cultural issues, so that we can achieve a systems level change. So next team is up, Gwyn. Yep.
Great. Thank you so much, Debbi and Gordian. That was an amazing tool. Great, so we're gonna move into another exercise. It's called The Strength in Our Stories. And if you can, please have just a piece of paper or a page in your notebook handy and a pen. So just any piece of paper, preferably blank. If it has lines, no worries, and a pen or a marker, whatever you have just close by. So this is a storytelling tool that's based on an appreciative inquiry approach. So the appreciative inquiry, which aims to kind of unearth dreams and possibilities instead of just always being focused on a problems-based approach. And in this case, we're looking at storytelling and a strength-based approach to facilitating. Okay, so in just a couple of minutes, we're going to do another breakout group in pairs. And some of you I know this exercise, so I hope you enjoy it as well. And each one, you're going to decide in your pairs who's going to go first. And the first person will tell a story for just 1.5 minutes. So it's just a short story. And the prompt is a challenge that I have overcome in my systems change or my social change work. So just a short story that you can tell relatively quickly in 1.5 minutes to your partner. And the partner, in the meantime, is going to be completely focused on you and your story. And you're going to write down all of the strengths that you notice in your partner while they're telling the story. Okay, that is your task. When the 1.5 minutes is up, then the partner who's been writing down the strengths has 1 minute just to reflect all of those strengths back to the person who told the story. And then we'll switch. Okay, I'm going to put the instructions in the chat, but it will be very helpful if the person who's not telling the story can keep time. So literally 1.5 minutes, when the 1.5 minutes is up, then the other person for 1 minute just shares the strength and we switch. And then we'll come back to the big group. Okay, so here are the instructions. And the prompt. Okay. Here we go. If you have any problems, just come on back to the main group. But Anthony, if you could put us in the groups of 2. Very quick. That was a very quick exercise. I'm wondering if, let's see, too quick. Great one. Yes, we had to really focus in on that last piece of the exercise. And I'm sorry if you didn't get to finish your story. But it's just an example of something that you can, a storytelling exercise that really, it's meant to be short, but maybe not quite as short as we had for today. But at any rate, if you have a piece of paper handy, what I would invite you to do is to take that piece of paper. Here I've got a blank piece of paper, and just put on that piece of paper one strength that you bring to the work that you do in systems change or social change. So one strength, and it doesn't need to be a strength that your partner named in you. Okay, we'll just take 1 minute, and if you can write it as big and bold as you can, just one strength. Okay. Does everybody have their strength? Yeah? Okay, great. So what I'd like to invite you to do now is just hold up your piece of paper up to the screen, and we will get a sense of all of the different strengths that we have in this group. And when you're ready, you can just put up the piece of paper once everybody has their piece of paper up, if you'd like to. Great. Wonderful. And I was just gonna, that is fantastic. Perfect. So that's our mural of strengths that we have in this group. And sorry, Haluk, I am sorry you didn't have a paper, but hopefully you thought about one of the strengths that you brought into this work. Wonderful. So I'm going to hand it over to Brendon, who's going to lead a last exercise, and then we'll close it out at the hour and a half. Brendon.
Thanks. Anthony is still with us, right? Looking around.
No, Anthony's left, but he has made.
I am.
So
yes.
You're Anthony now. Okay.
Yes.
I have to turn it into Anthony. So Marta, can you kick out 3 people from this space into a room? Don't kick them out yet, but just choose randomly 3 people who are participants. And just by warning, if you get kicked out, you're going to have to come in and answer a question, but it's going to be light and fun. Before those, when you choose those 3 people, just let me know. Before those 3 people go, I'm going to pose a question to the whole group. We're going to use a bit of a process that is kind of harvesting and kind of collective visioning. It's an exercise you can use in both ways together. But since we're closing, I'm going to kind of try and demonstrate how it can be used in both ways. So the question is essentially kind of reflecting on today's session and just in general, your thoughts around this question. How can facilitation amplify systems change? Just type it right there, systems change work. So Marta, have you chosen the 3 people?
Yes, and I will put them in the waiting room. Is
You'll
that
put
okay?
them in the waiting room. And so each of you, don't leave, don't worry, you're going to be brought in one by one, and you're going to answer the question by yourself. So if one person will be brought in, you'll answer the question, and then you'll stay. And then another person will come in and will answer the question. And then we'll kind of see the reason behind this. So Marta, let us know once they're out. Are they all out?
No, wait, I will do that now. The first one went.
And as we're waiting for all 3 to go, I'll just mention that kind of also in this session, something that happened behind the scenes that you didn't see was we completely changed our agenda. And you know, in the beginning, we went a little bit over, and also we noticed that there was kind of an energy that wasn't happening right between how we set up the agenda. So we were typing in chat between each other and kind of adapting to the time and the energy flow. And I think I want to show kind of live, you didn't probably notice it, but that's also what good facilitation is feeling the energy of the group, noticing the time, noticing the needs, noticing the flow of the different people. And so that's just also a quick little live lesson right in front of your eyes. So Marta, we have the 3 people out, right? 3 people are in the waiting room.
Yes, they've been there for a minute.
So each of you can also reflect on this question as you're listening, but I'll tell you what the exercise is. We'll let the other people 3 stay in suspense. So they're each going to come back in and they're going to answer a question. If we were live in a space, we would pretend we're one person is a reporter, and we would try and capture all of the answers to the questions on a big kind of chart. What we'll do is I'll just ask somebody to volunteer to maybe type some of what they're hearing in the chat. Does anybody want to volunteer to do that? Just raise your hand so I can see just one person to type what they're hearing in the chat. A quick kind of hand raise. Anybody? Okay, thank you, Sarah. Sarah Dobrin, sorry if I said it wrong. So Sarah, just kind of as you're listening, to the answers you'll type in the chat. Each person will have 1 minute to answer the question. The rest of you, as you're listening, what I'd like you to kind of do is just, if you have paper, try and just either write down words or draw images of what you're hearing. So kind of we're all going to be listeners in different ways. One is going to be a kind of formal harvesting of Sarah, we'll do that. And the rest of us will kind of do our own internal reflection in whatever way works for us. If you're more visual, then use visual. If you're more, words-based, use words. Marta, send the first person in, please.
So just one?
Just one.
So it's going to be Peter.
Okay. Let's see when
He's coming. Yeah.
Is he here? Peter, you're with us. Hi, Peter. So you can unmute. Peter, you have 1 minute to tell us your answer to the question of how can facilitation amplify systems change work?
All right. Well, I just wrote down this. Helps identify issues and potentials of a system that you're working with from a cross-section of stakeholders, and helps identify missing parts through a collective sort of knowledge base. So that means through facilitation, people can actually, when you bring a group of people together, you can actually learn from each other, and you may actually discover new information from the different stakeholders. And then we also have the, that idea of the local experts. So the people come as each individual is an expert in a particular area. So that's what I think facilitation does for systems of change.
Thank you, Peter, and nice and concise. Marta, send in the next one. And Peter, you'll get to, you're lucky because you were first, so you'll get to hear the other perspectives. The last person will have no idea what the others
Right.
Yes,
So,
I'm letting in Tracy now.
okay, so Tracy will join us in a second. If we were in a physical place, remember what that used to be like? We would have that person actually walking through the door. Here, Tracy, you're with us now. Welcome. Tracy, you have about 40 to 60 seconds to give us your answer to the question about how can facilitation amplify systems change work.
I think facilitation cracks us into consciousness. It starts to ignite the thinking in us humans, and it gets us to start having an open mind, open our hearts, and then ultimately the will to change and the will to move forward. So it's that cracking humans into consciousness can happen in a facilitation.
Wonderfully concise. Thanks, Tracy. I can, Marta, let in the last person, I think. And here we have, trying to see where that person is. So whoever is the last person, there you are. I'm going to say your name wrong. Sudeshna, is that right? Okay, you can unmute, and you are unlucky because you have heard nobody else's response. And Peter and Tracy are lucky because they at least hear somebody else's response to compare to theirs, just for fun. But go ahead and tell us in 60 seconds, how can facilitation amplify systems change work?
So just to clarify, I'm a total beginner at this, but I will tell you my understanding of how it changes. So basically, facilitation is a very important process to get people to the table, have a very open and honest discussion about things that matter to them. So they're starting from the same understanding of what the issue could be potentially, or they're starting on the same page where they understand the issue, but they might have different approaches to doing it. And facilitation, I think, identifies existing assets, gaps, overlaps, differences of opinions. It helps create equity on the table. It also helps create new solutions to problems that people might not have thought of. And it also helps create a sustaining and ongoing dialogue that is not very controversial or judgmental. I don't know how to say it, but I think the role of the facilitator is very important when they, talk to people about bringing these things out and making sure that people are being respectful, people are being heard, and it's a safe space and they can voice their opinions. And it could be a very fulfilling process. I'm not sure if I'm 6 seconds in or not. I can keep going.
Perfectly fine, yes. We could all keep going. We also only have 2 minutes left, and I know everybody has their lives. My wife is already yelling at me for not having prepared enough for dinner. So I just kind of wanted to do this exercise, and as to kind of also demonstrate a few things. One is you can use this to do a harvest like we did, but just in general for sharing different perspectives. I've used it a lot more for visioning, to get different people to from different parts of the organization to step in and share their own perspective of where the organization or network should go, to show the diversity of perspectives. And then you can do a lot of follow-up to how to converge those perspectives, to cluster them, to kind of frame them. And I could think just kind of, we chose 3 topics today that we're trying to illustrate 3 different approaches to kind of systems change facilitation. One is about how you can kind of facilitate, think about kind of your place and why you're doing what you're doing, and also your motivations to kind of help facilitate decision-making in a more collaborative and collective way. Gwyn's was more kind of about this process of looking back at the past and finding kind of strengths and stories, and which you can use in ways that are not just for kind of your individual strengths, but also I've used a lot in kind of assessing kind of communities, and not forgetting that the communities that we're trying to work with already have a lot of resources and knowledge and experiences to build upon. And the last one, yeah, I explained kind of how you can use that in multiple different ways. If we want, we can do a quick picture as well, just to see. I'm very curious if everybody wants to hold up their paper to see who drew, who wrote for the speakers. Everybody can hold it up now. Just get close to the screen and we'll do a screenshot. And for the 3 speakers who came in, we asked for 3 different kinds of harvesting: to draw or to write. And then one person, Sara, actually wrote what she heard in the chat. So we actually harvest the different perspectives in 3 different ways. Gwyn, I'll turn it over to you to close this out.
Great, thanks so much, Brendon. And I'm gonna actually just turn it right over to Kim, and I think we're gonna just close it on out.
So thanks to everyone for joining us. You know, facilitation is different right across the globe. So I'm South African and now live in America, and how we do it. So facilitation really shifts and changes depending where you are, what culture you're in. And so we just want to thank you. We hope that this was really valuable. If you want to drop in, I put a sentence there. One thing I learned, so I will, ... If you want to just drop that in quickly. One thing I learned, so I will. And then we're really thinking about the action steps from here, creating a group that would meet once a month, and we can all learn and share and grow new practices and just become a supportive group. So if you'd like to be part of that, please let us know. And we are running late, so I just want to do a quick high energy. Just rub your hands. Let's get some energy going, right? Wherever you are, I know some nighttime and morning time, and then just send it out to whoever's next to you. And we just want to thank you for choosing to be with us. We really enjoyed and hope that the session has been valuable for you all. Thank you for sharing.